Welcome to Map Crow, the RPG art show. My name is Kyle, and today we're drawing your D&D world. So it's finally happened to you. You've been bitten by the homebrew bug, and you want to draw an overworld map for your new kingdom or country or island or whatever, so that your players can interact with this fantasy land that you've made for them. So you print out a hex grid and start just drawing random continent shapes. Maybe you have an idea for like the whole island is shaped like a dragon or a skull, or you are trying to make it look like natural landforms and really pay attention to elevations and the directions of river flows and all of these geological details. You start marking off where your major locations are, your cities, your roads, your mountain ranges, your forests, and whatnot. You've even done a lot of research ahead of time and checked out JP Couvert's wonderful tutorials on how to draw maps using just simple shapes.
And if you haven't, you really should check the link in the description below.
And as you are finishing up, you have this nagging question in the back of your mind. Is this map any good? I mean, it serves its function. It has everything kind of laid out on it. It conveys the proper information, but it's sort of a bunch of arbitrary squiggles on a hex grid. What would make this map better than another map? And you answer that anxiety by just putting more stuff on it, more locations, more islands. Those are really fun to draw, and they add a lot of visual interest. Maybe you can add a compass rose or little sea monsters or ships. But really, you're not improving the map at all. Or rather, you are drawing more map, but what you should have been drawing this whole time is a game board. Now, I have a big disclaimer here. I'm not trying to tell you what you should like or what you should enjoy doing or anything like that. I want to offer you a different perspective to get different results. And I do not want to diminish what you enjoy, what you do, or what anybody out there is creating and adding into this wonderful community. This is the Map of Faerun by Mike Schley. You probably recognize this map. It is beautiful and it is ubiquitous. Schley has done a lot of work for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons over the years. He's done dungeon maps, he's done isometric location maps, and of course these large overland maps as well, and has basically set the standard for what a modern D&D map is supposed to look like. And this Map of Faerun really shows its assumptions about what a map ought to be, or at least what the art brief said it needed to be. Because everyone, certainly artists, are all aware that maps are of land and land looks like this. From the vantage point that this photo gives us, we can see a lot of assumptions about what maps of land is supposed to show. It's showing grasslands, forests, mountains, coastlines. Notice you can't see any detail of cities or farmland that stretch on for miles and miles. At this scale, it just doesn't show up. Imagine if you were a player in a brand new campaign and your DM had printed out this exact image and then labeled it up with a bunch of fantasy cities. Ask yourself this: where do you want to go first on this map? You might look at a peninsula, you might look at a snow-capped mountain. Your eyes are going to be drawn to where there is detail or contrast. But by and large, this map doesn't really offer any suggestions as to what is an interesting location and what is just more land with nothing really special to say about it. Our contemporary scientific assumptions about what maps are and what they're useful for and what they should look like have definitely colored what Faerun looks like in all the published material. And because of the assumptions of visual design that are laid upon this map, the place names are kind of doing a lot of heavy lifting on this map to communicate where adventure is to be had. The fields of the dead and the forest of worms and the wood of sharp teeth are all fine. They suggest what you might find if you go into the woods, but visually speaking, that's not being carried at all. And I want to be extra clear here. I am not picking on Mike. Mike is a brilliant artist capable of drawing anything he wants to. This is an art brief situation. This is an art direction situation. This map doesn't even have a hex grid to help you keep track of these distances. It just has a little map scale down in the corner, and you need to measure those yourself. This map doesn't have any political borders on it. It doesn't clue you into what kind of wildlife you could see here. It's sort of a blank, inoffensive canvas that is just very, very clear about land features and distances. As a game board, this map of Faerun, I think, really falls short of the mark of offering up what Dungeons & Dragons is about and what you can do in it. This map is Carta Marina, and it was created by Olaus Magnus in the 16th century. Olaus did not have photographs of what the world looked like from space. Olaus had books, he had other maps, and he had the stories of sailors describing the cultures, the flora, the fauna, the folklore, the military actions of the areas he was drawing. And I'm willing to bet if you were starting a new campaign and your GM brought out the entirety of the Carta Marina, or even just a segment like this from it, you would pick out some detail and say, let's go check out that thing. Because Olaus was concerned with human scale information, not scientific facts about what the world really looks like. I'm sure this is as accurate as Olaus could make it as far as geography and placement and scale, but what he's really interested in is conveying place, not just location. The Carta Marina has what the creative team behind Zelda Breath of the Wild calls gravity. Check the link in the description below for a link to an article about what I am mentioning here. But the idea is when you're creating an open world video game, certain locations as they come over the horizon need to pull you towards them. These need to stand out from the rest of the features that your screen is full of and sort of like yank you around from location to location, kind of getting lost in the moment-to-moment emergent adventure of the map. And while the Carta Marina certainly conveys more gravity than the map of Faerun in 5th edition, it's still not a game board, and that is what you are creating if you're prepping for a homebrew game. So let's get out a new hex grid and see if we can't synthesize some of what we've been talking about. Before we start drawing coastlines and mountains and land features, let's start with the most immediate thing that is going to matter to the players, which is a place to start the game in, oftentimes a populated city or a small village. Cities need a source of fresh water, so let's draw a river going directly through the middle of it. The next thing our game needs is a perilous location to travel to. Some kind of dungeon or evil tower, something like that. And we don't want this adventure location to be exactly nearby, so putting it on the other end of the map is a good idea. While drawing this map, I am much more concerned about the distances of each hex than I am about the scale of what is in each hex. The primary purpose of drawing things on the map, basically how they would be seen, is to suggest adventure, is to spurn people into the wilderness to go look at things and interact with the game world. Now that we have our two most important locations for our short campaign, we can start drawing in some interesting land features. But these land features are not just arbitrary, and they're not just there to add naturalistic detail. They are there to suggest interesting decisions to make. So we know that if there is a mountain between us and the evil castle, we either have to climb over it or go around it. This adds a level of decision making for the players, and it involves decisions in the game about time and distances and resource tracking and all that, which presumably if you're using a hex map, that is going to be in your game. Now that we've gotten some land features in our two locations, let's put something interesting and perilous between these two locations. Adding a bunch of moorland or swamp or hills or grassland between the two locations is not enough. We need that to be characterized in some way to telegraph what the players might expect if they go there. So I've added some henges and standing stones in the middle of this moorland to make it characterful and memorable. But of course, having one location is not enough. That location has to be a choice between two things. So if you add one area between two destination points, you need to add another to go through. And we want these areas to be large, so it is a significant decision to choose one over the other. And we also want to imply what kinds of factions or creatures could be coming in and out of that area as well. If your players can look at the map and see that they'll have to deal with wild dogs and ghosts when they're going through the hedgelands, or spiders and witches if they go through the spider woods, or orcs in guard towers if they go up through the road into the evil tower, or if they have to deal with angry giants or dwarves if they go through the mountains. All of these are going to help telegraph interesting decisions to make to the players, and also help the players communicate what they want to be in the story, in the challenges that they're laying out for themselves for the GM, so the GM can start prepping ahead of time. So instead of trying to invest your map with interest by drawing lots of details or interesting shaped mountains or really evocative place names, think about how to communicate the priorities of your game world and the decision space by drawing the tiny little houses and funny little ghosts and, silhouetted little dogs. As an artist, every time you sit down to draw something, you are confronted with an infinite possibility space, and every decision begins in an arbitrary space. So the wisdom of the craft is to remove that arbitrary decisions with decisions that are full of wisdom and meaning. So if we're making a game map, we need to communicate what decisions the game is asking us to make. We start by populating the map with the locations that we start and we will need to one day travel to, and then we add lots of locations where we might have to travel through to get there. And as I am fond of reminding people, I like Bernard Suits' definition of game as a voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. So really, the map is setting out all these different obstacle courses and offering your players a chance to circumvent them or make meaningful decisions onto what obstacles they feel prepared for, under what time constraints, and what narrative context. And once you've got everything laid out on your map with all of this information about factions and creatures you might encounter on the road, the game kind of starts running itself, especially if you are using encounter tables to make the world come alive. I think that will do it for the last episode of Map Crow for 2022. What a wild year it was, and what an exciting year 2023 is proving to be. Expect some exciting announcements about projects and books in January. Until next time, my friends, farewell. Thank you for your patience, everybody. I know it had been a while since I put out a new video, but the end of the semester was quite dramatic for me. I got sick, and of course I had to do all the grading to end my classes, and I was doing some traveling and all this kind of stuff, so I just decided to give myself a little break from putting out videos and really thinking about what I want these videos to do and what I want this channel to be for folks. And in the future, I'm thinking about running my Patreon credits over the back end of the after show here, and then also answering any kinds of questions that come up that don't really need a whole video, but would be interesting to kind of talk about in a shorter format. and also just a place to put weird drawings from my sketchbook. I feel like I'm drawing just, high quality, high finished, polished work only for this channel and for everything, and there's just no place to really kind of show my weirder sense of humor that's happening in my sketchbook, so I'm thinking that's where this is going to go from now on. So enjoy Spudzo the Mobile Potato.